G'day everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this fifth market briefing prior to ATE 2021. Today, we're focusing on the first international market that can actually come to us at the moment, which is very exciting, and that, of course, is New Zealand. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dominic Meerling, and I am in the industry relations team here at TA. Most likely also getting today's gig as the honorary TA Kiwi on this webinar. Today, I'll be getting us started by running you through the proceedings, and then I'll pop back on at the end for a Q&A with all of our speakers, time permitting. Firstly, though, in the spirit of reconciliation, Tourism Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to the land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to our elders, past, present, and emerging. Today's agenda, after my welcome and housekeeping, is firstly a market and campaign update with Andrew Hutchinson, who is our General Manager for Domestic and New Zealand. And this is followed by Kelly Maynard, our Head of Distribution and Development and Partnerships for Business Events, running us through a BE update. Then you've got Idea coming on, talking a little bit about some of the partnership and distribution landscape for the New Zealand market. And then very excitingly, an interview between Idea and Dave Fordyce from House of Travel. After this, as mentioned, we will have a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please send those through at the bottom using the Q&A function, and we'll try and get to those before the end. Just some quick housekeeping as well before we kick off, that this briefing will be recorded and you will be able to access this at a later date. We'll send that little email through as well as the actual presentation as well. And then there will also be a survey that will come through afterwards. So we'd appreciate if you had some time to fill that out because it helps us to improve future ones of these. And so without further ado, here is Andrew to give a little bit of a market update about the New Zealand market.
Great, thanks Dom, and hello everybody. It's great to have the opportunity to talk to you all today about the New Zealand market, a market that is of significant commercial importance to Australian tourism. So if we can just move to the next slide, please. I'm also particularly excited to be talking to you all the day after the Trans-Tasman bubble opened. It's been a long time coming, however, we of course to celebrate with freedom of movement across the Tasman for the first time in a year. Aviation capacity is ramping up in line with consumer demand, along with new air routes, which will increase destination exposure and drive new demand. We'll be looking at a New Zealand aviation snapshot later in the presentation. Consumer confidence is also rising at its highest level in a long time. Many families and friends across the Tasman will be reunited with the VFR market, the first segment to return, based on significant pent-up demand. And while it's early days, the New Zealand bubble will hopefully become a blueprint for future bubble markets in the future. So the next slide. So before we move on for some scene setting, I think it's worth mentioning the current COVID situation in New Zealand. Clearly, there's no community transmission at the moment based on yesterday's stats, but both New Zealand and Australia have done an amazing job in managing COVID and preventing community transmission. And our collective efforts and success in managing COVID essentially facilitated the opening of the Trans-Tasman bubble yesterday. Now, while both countries' vaccine rollout is slower than others, the vaccination program will only help improve consumer confidence and travel intention further, though I should point out vaccines are not required for Trans-Tasman travel. So let's take a quick look, first of all, at some historical pre-COVID New Zealand market stats, which essentially provides a benchmark for us to aim for and replicate as part of our market recovery efforts and hopefully grow over time. So based on 2019 data, the New Zealand market delivered 1.4 million visitors a year overall, resulting in 13 million total night stays. And this delivered 2.6 billion in overnight tourism expenditure, based on an average of $2,000 spend per trip or $201 per night, with an average night stay of 10 days. If we look at the market performance drivers in a bit more detail now, I'm just going to look at the top three here. You can see the others on the screen. The top three importance factors driving destination choice are safety and security, which is very similar to the domestic market here, value for money, and nature and wildlife. And since the last research was conducted, the importance factors have slightly moved, and value for money is now sitting at number 2 as a driver, ahead of nature and wildlife, which is now sitting at number 3. And the top 3 importance factors for trip type, VFR, which is probably no surprise, the opportunity to travel and experience multiple destinations, and resort holidays, which is closely followed by beach holidays, so that to some degree the two go hand in hand. And then the top 3 importance factors for information sources for planning, based on the most recent research, is having visited Australia before, recommendations, talking to friends and relatives, and internet research. And it's interesting to note, looking at those stats, there's not a huge gap between internet research and booking with a travel agent or an online hotel booking site. So the next slide, please. So Travel Sentiment Tracker was established in April 2020 to provide a regular assessment of the key confidence and travel indicators of Tourism Australia's 16 core markets. And the research is conducted on a monthly basis with Tourism Australia's research partner BDA Marketing Planning, and is available on Tourism Australia's corporate website. The latest research that we're using today was conducted between the 15th to 18th of March, so prior to the recent bubble announcement. And with the opening of the bubble, it's likely international travel and booking intention will increase. And we've got new sentiment research is due out later this week, which we'll share with you in due course. So New Zealand consumer confidence is far more optimistic in comparison to other Western markets. However, travel and booking intention are similar. China and the Southeast Asian markets are the most positive across all the metrics and destinations. New Zealand's consumer confidence has bounced back from a decline in February, and it's now the most optimistic since tracking began in April 2020. And international travel and booking intention are following similar trends, with both improving significantly in the last 2 months, and both the highest since tracking began. And I guess most importantly, perceptions of Australia as a safe destination have improved, and is now back to 65%, which was last seen prior to the Northern Beaches outbreak in Sydney over Christmas. So if we move to the next slide, and looking at consideration, awareness and intent, I mean, globally, Australia continues to hold the top position for consideration and intention to visit amongst New Zealanders, well ahead of competing destinations such as the UK, USA and South Pacific, which is fantastic news, but we have to maximise that window of opportunity before the other borders open. So before we look at destination choice, let's look at a few summary metrics for the New Zealand market. So over half of New Zealanders are open to holidays, with 35% thinking and dreaming about their next trip. 23% are actively researching and planning their next international holiday. A further 17% are intending to travel internationally in the next 6 months, and a further 10% by February 2022, with 25% intending to travel in the next 1 to 2 years, and a further 22% in over 2 years. The top driver for an international holiday is feeling like they need a holiday, which after the last year is really no surprise, and followed by visiting family and friends and finding good travel deals. And certainly, I think it's fair to say the ramping up of airline capacity in line with bubble demand and opening will see a significant improvement in the competitiveness of airline pricing and deals available. The top barriers for booking international travel are travel restrictions, fear of contracting COVID-19, and a family or individual's financial situation. And I'm pleased to say Australia is top of the bucket list of international destinations to visit once the pandemic is over for 60% of New Zealanders. And hopefully the bubble opening this week will go some way to realising that intent and demand earlier. Next slide. So if we move on now to look at Australia's most desirable destinations, the Gold Coast is considered the most desirable in Australia, as well above average, though easing along with Melbourne. Sydney as a desirable destination is up strongly into second position, though it remains below average for New Zealand. Various other Queensland destinations are also prominent, while Tasmania is growing, which will no doubt be aided further by the new Auckland to Hobart route with Air New Zealand. Then if we look at the purchasing funnel, overall, Australia's cities are the most intended travel destinations for New Zealanders to visit in the next 2 years, with Sydney the most intended, followed by the Gold Coast, Melbourne and Brisbane. The demand for cities from New Zealand is good news, as it will come as no surprise that as a result of COVID and our border closures, Australian cities are hurting and are in need of support, with historically low occupancy levels, as low as 30% for our largest cities of Melbourne and Sydney. This has resulted in some amazing deals that are now available to entice travellers back to the city. And if we look at the most preferred destinations overall, in recent latent demand testing, destinations along Australia's east coast are the most preferred, whereas the Great Barrier Reef is the most preferred Australian holiday destination for high-value travellers, along with Melbourne, Sydney, Southeast Queensland and Tasmania. And these destinations are strongly associated with attractions New Zealanders are interested in, such as beaches, coastline, wildlife, natural beauty, and good local food and wine. So if you move to the next slide, we're now going to look at the aviation snapshot for New Zealand. I think this might be, there you go. So a brief look here. So pre-COVID, there were 525 flights a week between Australia and New Zealand, with a total of 4.9 million seats per year. Current situation, looking at forward schedules to May 21, there is 278 flights per week, ramping up fast, which is equal to 56% of pre-COVID seats. And some new air routes, which is hopefully going to drive new demand. We've got Auckland to Hobart launching as Air New Zealand's 10th Australian destination, which will be a year-round destination twice weekly. Qantas and Jetstar will start flying to all pre-COVID destinations. And Qantas is launching 2 new direct routes from Auckland to Cairns and Auckland to the Gold Coast. As most of you would know by now, Virgin are planning to recommence their travel in October. And talking to Virgin, that was due to be aligned with the completion of the vaccine rollout in Australia, which we know is going to take a bit longer than that now. So we need to stay in touch with Virgin on their plans in the market. So if we move to the next slide, we're now going to have a look at Tourism Australia's campaign, which is currently live in the New Zealand market, which hopefully most of you will have already seen or been exposed to. So we launched our first campaign the same week as the bubble announcement. Excuse me, the slide on the screen is our high-level media block plan, and the green line is the week that the bubble commenced, i.e. this week. So we've got an integrated campaign that's covering TVC, online video, out of home, press, social, search, and also the NZME platform, which I'll talk about a bit later. Next slide. This is our social post that we posted on the day the New Zealand Prime Minister announced the bubble, which I think was the 6th from memory. Now we're going to have a quick look. I'll just go through this, Sophie, before we change the slide. The TVC, we've got a 60-second, which we're going to look at in a second. We've also got a 30-second and 2 15-second edits in rotation as well. So the sentiment and messaging is playing to the fact that the New Zealanders are a nation of firsts, the first to climb Mount Everest, the first to see the sun every day, the first to bungee jump. We've also got a cheeky challenge in there on who lays claim to the Pavlova. And our overall key message is that we want to use this opportunity to celebrate our Kiwi mates as being the first to travel to Australia. So if we could just take a quick look at the 60-second TVC, that would be great.
Hey New Zealand, it's Oz here. This is hard to admit, but you're pretty good at coming first. I mean, you only conquered the world's biggest mountain, so we reckon you can handle the world's biggest reef. You beat everyone to Antarctica too, so go on, have the first icy beer off the tap. And it's hard to believe you guys were the first to fly a plane, but was it ever over stuff like this? And that infamous PAV, okay, let's not get started on that again. But how about we give you the first bite of this? The sun may hit you guys first, but it really warms up by the time it gets over here. And if that's not enough, you adrenaline junkies showed us the bungee jump. But how about this to get your blood pumping? Or this? Or this? Or this? Or even just this. So New Zealand, isn't it time you added another first to your list?
That's great. If we move on to the next slide, we hope you like the sentiment of the firsts. Okay, here are some examples. So if we go back a couple of slides, sorry, Sophie, the out-of-home examples. There's the out-of-home, so you can see we're using the first messaging there, be the first to walk our red carpet, first to make a splash, etc. If we move to the next slide, that's our print execution. Save the first sneak peek. Welcome back, New Zealand. Ready for your first photo bomb. Then we've got a couple of slides looking at digital display. Again, consistent with that first messaging. It's 2 slides there. If we move to the next slide. Now the NZME partnership, which has been in place since December last year, and that was developed in collaboration with STOs, leveraging the power of the NZME platform and portfolio. So we've created a content and campaign ecosystem with a key focus on key themes that are most important and relevant to New Zealand consumers based on our research. We're also working with some of the major New Zealand retail partners in the conversion space across this platform, but I'll leave Adia to cover that later in the distribution update. The next slide. It's a bit of a look and feel for Australia.com, which is updated to reflect the first campaign messaging. We're also in the process of adding deals and offers from our partners in the market and also sourcing deals from the ATTW database. So if you do subscribe to the ATTW database, it's really important that you make sure your deals are up to date on there so we can pull those through. And then from a PR angle, we've been very busy with PR. We issued a corporate press release about the launch of the TAB, the first campaign, including messaging in TA webinar and TA stakeholder.com channels. Excuse me. We arranged broadcast interviews with leading Australia and New Zealand breakfast programs talking about TA's first international campaign in more than a year. We're planning a TA media event in New Zealand with a one voice approach with the STOs. Continue to develop pitch packs themed on Be the First, Welcome Back messaging, which will then shift to Book Now and Travel Now language. Providing top-tier NZ media with story ideas, tourism info and imagery for destination features. And we'll be looking at media hosting opportunities and working with STOs to create bespoke for meals and itineraries for media over in New Zealand. And then this week, we're currently working with TVNZ, one on breakfast integration for a week-long live cross to celebrate the opening of the bubble. Breakfast presenter Maddie McLean will be reporting live this week from New South Wales and will be in South Australia next week. During the live crosses, the show will run 10 pre-recorded segments showcasing Maddie experiences a range of our tourism offerings in each state. TVNZ are also running a consumer competition inviting New Zealanders to go into the draw to win a prize package in New South Wales and one prize in South Australia. And I'm pleased to say just a few hours after the New South Wales competition launched on air, TVNZ had received almost 3,000 entries. And then we're also very happy to say the Breakfast Crew will return to Australia in May for a second block of integration where we'll be working with Queensland, Western Australia and Victoria crosses. Okay, so that's a bit of a wrap from me. Before we move on and look at partnerships and distribution, I'd like to introduce Kelly Maynard, Head of our Distribution, Partnerships and Business Events, to give you an update on business events.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Really delighted to be here. New Zealand is a key market for us for business events and the largest arrival numbers pre-COVID for our business events visitors. So we manage business events here in a centralised model from our Sydney office. So myself and my colleague, Emily Elkington, are the key contacts for business events. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on our distribution and marketing focus for this mature market. So our distribution objective for business events for New Zealand really is to maintain customer relationships. We've got a really great group of key planners in New Zealand to manage events and have potential business for Australia, and they know Australia well. So our job is to give them that new news information so that it can inform their programs and planning for business events, and really to maintain engagement with the Australian industry here who work in the New Zealand market and align our recovery activity. Some market insights and the latest information. We hosted a customer advisory panel with some of our key planners, a sort of select group last week. So the latest intel, really positive sentiment for the travel bubble. It's great news. And planners and corporate customers, see it as good news, but they are quite cautious. And I think we'll wait and see for the next sort of month or so how, how leisure and then corporate travel resumes. But positive sentiment saying that for business events planning for Australia, certainly for 2022. Most events domestically are confirmed between now and the end of the year. And domestic events are being delivered in New Zealand, and really important to note they have been doing events locally in New Zealand in recent months with no social distancing. And this has been keeping planners busy. They're working to limited staffing and reduced resources and have been delivering incentives and conferences across New Zealand. The one thing that's coming across loud and clear is the, connections and value of shared experiences, for face-to-face events is so valuable. So we're not seeing or hearing any demand for hybrid or virtual events moving forward for incentives or conferences. Associations different, they will be, looking at maintaining virtual events in the short term. But for incentives and conferences, it really is that face-to-face events is the key moving forward. We are expecting potentially smaller group sizes and a real focus on wanting wow, unique itineraries, and major special events have been a real driver to inform, and plan incentive programs in the past, and we expect that will continue moving forward. Destinations with direct flight access in Australia have been a priority for events in the past from New Zealand, but we are seeing a slight shift, which is a good opportunity for Australia as corporate clients really want to see, unique or different destinations. They do know some of our capital cities well. So, that's part of the story and part of a role for our content and marketing, but also for industry, to talk about those unique opportunities. In terms of what we're planning for business events, as I mentioned, we hosted a customer advisory panel session last week. We are planning a market visit in June, and we're just working out what that would look like, but that's the earliest, that our key customers, think is going to work well, particularly with, how busy they are at the moment. And we'll then, as part of our planning for next financial year, look at some educational visits for key planners to Australia, but we're not planning anything earlier than potentially September at this stage. So from a marketing perspective, content is so important for us, and our marketing strategy has been in recent months and will continue for the moment to be content-led to really drive awareness of our incentive and conference products here in Australia. So our content is shared through media placements in New Zealand. So Meeting News magazine is a key partner with everything from masthead banners, sponsored posts, full-page takeovers, which link through to content on our Business Events Australia website. And it is a mature market, as I said, so a key role for us with our content is talking about that new news product, product and experiences across Australia that really will help inform future incentive and conference programs. And Meeting News, we've had 25 placements this financial year alone, ranging from product across Australia. And then lastly from us, a key focus as part of our content is our Australia Next magazine, which is a self-published magazine we've created for the Incentive Business Events Planner to inspire and educate on our business events product across Australia. We're up to the 8th edition, which was launched in March this year. We are sharing digitally in New Zealand, and also it's available via print and web, and we've promoted through our media buy as well. We've had 7 previous editions that have certainly been very positive, and we've actually done some hard copies as well, where planners have shared with their corporate customers in market. This is really an opportunity to promote new hotels, experiences, venues, unique product, and really an opportunity for Australian industry to keep sharing that product with us so that we can certainly look to feature in some of our content. So that's a quick business events update from us. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Idia, who's going to give you a marketing and partnership distribution activity update.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for us to be presenting to you today. Before I start, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to the industry for being so resilient and to welcome this opportunity that we be able to market in New Zealand market. And also thank you to all this STOs as well. This TA hasn't been in the market for leisure for a long time in the New Zealand market. So we really appreciate your expertise and guidance through this whole activity and co-op we do together. So today, we just like to give you an update around the partnerships and distribution for New Zealand market. So tourism was, one slide too soon. There we go. So Tourism Australia will work with airlines. So the strategy is to support aviation recovery and also to increase Australia considerations for travel to maximize retail conversion by drive incremental revenue and the passengers. So we're in discussion with airlines who are monitoring the current inquiry and booking level. The idea is not to go in start to cooperations campaign straight after border is open. We like to see some of the pent-up demand has consumed, then going strong with some tactical activity. It is really pleasing to hear from the airlines from the last 2 weeks, the booking has been doing really well. We also were working with key distribution partners. We have some content partnership with NZME, which Andrew talked about earlier in market, and then provide the key distribution retail companies to have some digital banner, print, and a call to action to their ecosystem to convert booking. This is also together working with STOs. Since we are having engaged with them with the partnership with NZME. TripAdvisor campaign kicked off last week and to drive consideration and conversion as well. So I guess, and then that campaign aligns with our Be the First campaign really well. So we have created a lot of the content for each STOs to highlight their offerings as well. So I guess we cannot work with every one of you in the industry, unfortunately, but we strongly recommend you can work with our key distribution partners in market to be able to emphasize and highlight your product offerings. We also have a 2-year agreement with Virtuoso for Australia and New Zealand market, targeting premium market segment. It is with a slightly lighter touch for the New Zealand market. So we have no doubt there will be a lot of activity in the market, and what we're trying to do is really to complement what STO's activity to bring live the itineraries and products that Australia can offer. Of course, we want the whole industry involvement and engagement as well. So Tourism Australia is looking to provide resource for the industry for New Zealand and industry, in Australia and New Zealand to be getting involved. So we will continue invest very heavily in the specialist program, working with STOs, providing frontline traveler agents with the knowledge of destination product to better sell Australia. And then the Trade Resource Hub provides you marketing tools, and we have created a campaign landing page for New Zealand with all the information that how industry can get involved. Just a couple of examples of the Trade Resource Hub, and also our corporate website have the landing page, and also we have created a infographic for New Zealand market for Australia industry to better understand the market, which can be downloaded on our corporate website. Next, I would like to give you a quick distribution snapshot, the landscape, and share some insights with you as well. Travel agents took a huge hit since the pandemic, and the number has dropped almost 70%. Many have lost their job or on reduced hours. So hopefully with the border reopening, we will see demand picked up, and then hopefully to welcome of some travel agents back to the industry. According to the IATA stats, when we're looking at New Zealand travelers booking their flights, with agent, they're more likely to talk to their travel agent rather than book online. However, the #1 source for booking airfares is still through directly by airlines, which accounted for 46%. If we're looking at booking accommodation, top two sources are very close, being 29% travelers book via travel website or apps, and then 28% book directly with accommodation providers. And if you look at booking tours and activities, the number one source is direct with providers online, followed by travel website and also traditional travel agencies. So depending on which tourism sector you are in, hopefully those insights can be helpful and give you some idea how to choose and approach a distribution partners for New Zealand market. A quick update on our Aussie Specialist Program activity. I guess thanks to all the STO support again, and the program has gone from strength to strength, and we keep receiving really good positive feedbacks. So at the moment, we have close to 600 Aussie specialists in New Zealand, and we will continue work to grow this number and keep them engaged. Tourism Australia, together with STO, have carried out many webinars for Australian and New Zealand market agent. And then so far, 430 New Zealand agents have participated in this financial year. And we also have rolled out some great content initiative, what we call On the Road in Oz, with amazing content rollout for Queensland and Northern Territory in the last financial year, in this year as well. My last update on ATE. Super excited. I think it's first time Tourism Australia has provided opportunity for the ASP online front agent to participate in this event this year. I think it couldn't be a better time for the retail industry and also the frontline sellers to engage and connect with the sellers in Australia. But we also want to ensure the quality of the appointment. We don't want to turn that to a pure training event. So we have put some criteria around the Aussie specialist agent to have certain power of decision-making on products and itineraries for you to have a meaningful conversation with them. So far, we have 14 buyer companies and 2 Lux buyer company registered to attend ATE this year. And we have offered a really a one-off opportunity for them to come over, because all the international buyers at the moment are joining us virtually online. But with New Zealand border open, so we have offered them opportunity to switch it to the live event. So far, 10 buyers and 10 normal buyers and the 2 Lux buyers have confirmed they would love to come to Australia to meet with you guys face to face. So super exciting. So the preferencing, I believe, opens next week. So please make sure you do meet and say hello to our New Zealand buyers. So that's pretty much the update around partnership and distribution. And then I'm really, really delighted to have Dave Fordyce from House of Travel. He's the product director from House of Travel, to join us for a bit of chat today.
G'day guys, how are you all going? I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so delighted to have you as well. Thank you for tuning in from Auckland. I guess a quick little intro for House of Travel for those who are not too familiar with the company. House of Travel was founded in 1987, 34 years ago, with headquarters based in Auckland. It is the largest private-owned travel company in New Zealand, and also the largest online travel agency for flight booking in New Zealand as well. Pre-COVID, House of Travel has around 2,000 employees and about 75 stores across New Zealand. I know, Dave, it has been a really challenging year last year, and you've been trying your very best to keep your employee and then keep the store opening. What have you seen how the business have adapted really during the last 12 months throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it has, as you say, it's been a really challenging time for us all in the industry. So we've been obviously needing to reduce our size. We now have 58 locations across New Zealand, but we're still the largest individual travel agency across the nation. And we're in pretty much all the key communities across the country. But adapting has been really, there's a word that I don't know if it was used in Australia, but a word that was completely overused in New Zealand was pivot. And the guys have done a great job pivoting to selling domestic New Zealand, which is what they've been doing for the last year, because we just love putting together great holidays for people. So that's been great, and the guys have done a good job of that. But now the bubble's open, we're completely lining our business back into selling international. We can't wait to get people over to Aussie again.
Yeah, that's great. That's, I think, was so my next question is that any activities, upcoming in the pipeline you'd like to share with us? But I know you'll be very focused on Australia. Any particular activity? And I guess the key thing is how does the industry really to work with you as a key buyer? Any advice for the audience today?
Yeah, so obviously the retail stores were selling domestic, but behind the scenes, there's huge amount of planning that we've been putting in. We've been waiting for this for over a year, as you guys have. So my team have been pulling together a large amount of product and bundles of product, really around modules, because we've got a view that even pre-COVID, as an industry, we weren't doing the very best job that we could do to sell Australia and all the breadth of experiences, those incredible experiences that's on offer. So we've taken the time, I guess, over the last 12 months to pull together a whole lot of product bundles around those things that we feel that New Zealanders really ought to get out and do in Australia. And perhaps some things that they were doing in places like Europe. So previously, self-drive holidays, lots of stuff around food and wine, getting out and seeing that iconic stuff as well. So we've got stuff ready. We've stocked the shelves. It's now just making sure we can get the people in the stores to actually create that great holiday experience for them.
That's great. I think with the upcoming ATE, and you will be joining us face to face as well, connecting with our products and experience. That I think it's a perfect opportunity as well, like you said, to enrich your product offering based on what you have seen on the ground. So actually, I was keen to see you have the first-hand information on the ground. Andrew has shared a lot of the consumer insights, confidence, sentiment, but from based in New Zealand, what you have been seeing, I think, from your clients for new booking trend or any change of travel behaviors that you can share with us?
Yeah, at the moment, really what's going on, I think, is I'd say lots of VFR chatter over the last couple of weeks, lots of VFR bookings happening over the last couple of weeks. A little bit of inquiry around holiday, but I think people are it's a bit of cautious optimism at the moment. For me, my personal opinion, get the border open, get people walking through, going through, no little snap lockdowns, that kind of thing. That's just going to build that confidence that Andrew talked about before. Definitely the questions we're getting asked about, though, is around flexibility and particularly around refundability as well. People are asking questions like, what happens if a lockdown happens? What happens if I can't travel due to X, Y, Z? And whilst we've got some great travel insurance that will cover some of those scenarios, it doesn't actually cover everything. And so I think being as flexible around those booking terms and those kind of COVID clauses, those conditions, is really something we need to do as an industry together to just make sure we kind of put a line through that as a reason not to commit to a purchase, really.
Absolutely, and I think that's great tips for operators as well. And throughout the opening for domestic market, I think they're working on that a lot to provide that flexibility and then to boost confidence for consumers to book. And also, I think you mentioned COVID safe and all that. And then Tourism Australia does have a hub to house all these COVID safe information for each state as well. So that's some good information as well for the consumers. I guess I know there's quite sensitive areas around the travel agency. As I said, many have heard so much in the last 12 months, huge loss. But I want to hear your view on what are the roles really for travel agency brokers moving forward when the demand is starting to pick up for travel.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So you're right. Significantly less staff numbers, but I guess the other counter to that is we're not selling the world. So the great news is we've got capacity, and I'm sure we've got a lot of capacity. And certainly, sentiment is that we've got a lot of people who want to rejoin as and when we can. So that's fantastic to hear. What we're hearing is, it's a complicated world to kind of travel in at the moment. There's a lot of questions. I can tell you that the thing that came out from the New Zealand government just around, how it's all going to work was about that thick. And so it's a bit of a minefield for information. So I think the role of a travel agent is even more relevant than I think it was before. I've read things from overseas research that 20% of people that have never used a travel agency before are thinking of using a travel agency. So we can just help them through. That's kind of negative stuff though, and I think what we need to do, and we're really focused on, is just that really positive message about how do we create a better holiday experience for you using our knowledge and insight, working with you guys as the trade to bring that, and then bringing those ideas from the customer as well, and creating a better holiday. That's House of Travel's brand promise is better together, because it's something we passionately believe.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then we, as I said before, we'll be continuing to invest very heavily on this special program to help them to get back on their feet. I'm cautious about time. I know I just wanted one very quick short question. I know you've been to Australia 50 plus times. And then what was your most memorable experience or holiday in Australia?
Oh, and I knew you were going to ask me something like that. I know you've people from all states and territories. You're
it's a tricky one.
I've had so many incredible experiences, and it is amazing what is on the doorstep. Lots of I don't think I'm going to name an actual thing. Lots of amazing food and wine experiences. Lots of great experiences, shows. I've got lots of friends and family over there, so just getting out and seeing that as well is fantastic. Traveling with the family, theme parks. I'm not gonna name one because there's lots.
I know. So we're looking forward to welcome you in Sydney in June. So we'll catch up then.
Well.
Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us today. And now I think I'd like to invite everyone back online if there's any questions on the floor.
Excellent. Thanks for that, guys. I might kick things off with a question for you, Dave. So obviously the bubble, it's actually happened now. How have sort of the last couple of days been in terms of bookings? Have you got any word from the street? Has it taken off like a bat out of hell, or have we seen these phenomenal bookings now that people have that power to actually come to Australia, or rather be able to come back? More importantly, I think for you guys.
I'd love to sit here and say, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. We're run off our feet, and I've got to go and make a bunch of bookings, myself. It hasn't quite built that way, and I think if we go all the way back to last year, and like you guys, we've all done a million budgets. We did expect quite a big surge to start with, and we really tempered that as we've gone through the last few months. Like I said, I think my personal view is we just need to get a couple of weeks under our belt to just keep that confidence back, particularly for a holiday maker. Our online channel has been going well. It's not back to 2019 numbers yet. Our corporate channel's going well, so we are seeing some sentiment around business travel as well happening, and conferences and events will happen as part of that too. But I think it's going to just take us a few weeks to get some sort of sense of normality coming back in.
And I guess on that sort of VFR piece, I mean, what's your thinking for how we can get New Zealanders to spend more money when they are visiting friends and relatives in Australia?
Yeah, I think we've just got to keep talking about, because you're right, people go for VFR, but they'll always, I myself will go for VFR, but I'll always tack on a whole bunch of things. So I think we're just going to keep showcasing product, like you guys are doing, and like we're doing a lot of work with the state and regional tourism officers as well. We're going to keep showcasing all of those great things to do. But I think your domestic marketing program is also really critical as well at this point, because that's not going away. And if you can get your friends and family over there to actually start, dragging the Kiwis into something that perhaps they wouldn't have thought of before, I think that's pretty key too.
Sorry. Yeah, I want to echo what Dave just said. So I think it aligned with our campaign objective as well, because we want to overcome that over familiarity for New Zealand traveller, because they know Australia well, but we have so much to offer in their backyard. So we encourage them. to travel further.
They think they know Australia well, and I think
Exactly right.
it's probably now the potential to show people you don't know everything.
I agree, and I think Kiwis will be up for that though, because the same thing with domestic, right? They thought they knew domestic, and all of a sudden there's been just a plethora of product that's been put in front of them over the last year, which has just been fantastic. So they will start, I think, to get out and explore, and we've just got to make sure we're putting as much in front of them as we can.
Cal, a question in the BE space, I guess, for sort of those BE focused operators in Australia, what's sort of your advice, I guess, for how to best engage with the New Zealand market at the moment, especially, I guess, while things are still sort of a bit of a slow and steady approach?
Yeah, look, I think it's just being conscious that, the planners, in New Zealand, including, Dave's team, are under immense pressure at the moment delivering events in New Zealand. And I think there's been so much movement with things, being quoted and dates changing, and they're all limited resources as well. So I think for the moment, it's, getting together some information on your key products. Certainly make sure you share it with us, and we can look to include some of that information in the content that we're doing for New Zealand. But I think it's a really sort of measured approach at the moment. What the key planners we've spoken to just don't have the time to be, inundated by, Australian industry as much as everyone's excited about the bubble. So it's just that really measured approach, not trying to impact everyone at once. If you've got a newsletter, maybe, send that with some key information, but also think about sharing your content with us.
And I guess that sort of that Team Australia approach, just to, I guess, make that meaningful impact as opposed to annoying people eventually if everyone's
Yes.
sending 50 million things.
Yes.
Dave sent through a question around sort of ASP registrations, and obviously, we have these ASP registered numbers, but how many of those are actually still around in the industry? My comment to that one, Dave, would be that based on, I guess, the engagement that we've seen across the markets, obviously not talking New Zealand specifically, a lot of people have actually been using the last sort of 12 months to continue upskilling. So obviously, while some of them would have potentially, I guess, hibernated out of the industry or moved on to other things, I think the majority is actually still really engaged. And I guess, Dave, do you have anything to comment from your side?
No, I absolutely agree with that. So we had a big focus on ASP before COVID hit. We had Stacey Leach, who was the New Zealand ambassador for that program. It was a great house travel consultant as well. And because knowledge is critical, right? And knowledge of product and destination is key, particularly if your brand promise is better together. So having ASP was just gold for us, because it meant that we didn't have to go out and replicate that type of program. We could just work around the edges and highlight what we really wanted to focus in on in conjunction with it. So it's been a big push from us over the last 2-3 years. Really, we're really proud. We were monitoring it in 2019, watching our numbers, reporting it to the board actually. So that's just continued from our perspective, and will continue. So we really support the program. It's great.
Fantastic. And on that note, I think we'll wrap that up. We've hit sort of our time. And yeah, thank you all for your time today. Dave, thanks for joining in from across the ditch. We look forward to seeing you in person in Sydney in just a couple of weeks' time. God, it's flown by. And just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to find the recording of this as well as slides online. That link will be emailed to you. And otherwise, have a fantastic rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.